I have more comics to unbox. Here's another one. It is a comic book condition mystery box from Mile High Comics. What do I mean by condition mystery box? Let's open it and find out. All right, the orders are piling up here. I'm starting to receive them, and I'm going through them as fast as possible. But I need to take my time with each order, properly unpack the comic books, go through them, grade them, catalog them, put them in whatever version of my spreadsheet. Am I on like 11.3? I don't know, whatever it is. I keep changing my process, but I want to get these books out of the shipment from Mile High Comics. And I was placing a lot of these, honestly, as fast as possible before their coupon code ran out. I think they're still running that 60% off code, but there's a lot of really sneaky deals on there if you can use that code, and I think this is another one of those. So let's get this open and see what comics are inside. All right, typical from Mile High at this point. We've got a FedEx mailer. Like I always say, I always choose FedEx when I'm checking out. Once you get above the threshold for a certain amount, they'll give you free shipping, but you get to decide if you want FedEx or USPS. And I always go FedEx. I trust them more than the Postal Service. And the only thing with FedEx is I watch them on my security camera, and they literally just throw the box up on the porch. So that's always fun. Okay, so you've seen this before when I order a certain amount of books, and it's not necessarily quantity, but usually it's the cost of the order. They'll put this guy inside a larger, sturdier cardboard box, but this one just came in that FedEx envelope. But it's always kind of wrapped the same way. It's got this cardboard wrapper around it here, and some bubble wrap. So let's go ahead and undo this. Lots of layers here. So we've got the FedEx bubble mailer. We've got the bubble wrap around the comics themselves. And then additionally is this plastic bag. It's like a little shopping bag. And it's all part of the fun and the process of Mile High. So this is a smaller order. Doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't any special surprises or anything in here. But sometimes when I see even 3 or 4 books, I go ahead and grab them. So sometimes I will add a few books to the cart, then I'll wait a day or two, add a couple more, and then once I feel like maybe the order is significant enough, I don't know really what that means, but once it's significant enough, then I go ahead and place the order, or whatever I feel comfortable doing. So some of these you've seen before, so these are multiple copies, but let's get into them. The first one is a book that I'm kind of taking a chance on. I'm not really a big Gru the Wanderer person or a Destroyer Duck person, but this was something that came up and spiked, and this is Destroyer Duck #1. The order is small enough. Maybe I'll go ahead and take these out to show you the condition here and kind of grade them together. But there was an announcement that Gru is going to get possibly his own series and so on. This is like seriously wrinkled, like bad. Yeah, up and down here. So this screams pressing candidate. The spine is gorgeous. Spine has a little bit of a curl, but there's no spine ticks at all. So that's great. On the back looks pretty clean except for that dent right there. So is it near mint? No, it is not. Can it be pressed into near mint? Probably. I'd probably try a quick press first on this one and we'll see. But so what grade would you give that book, Destroyer Duck #1? I don't know. It's so wrinkled and dented. I don't know if I would even keep it in the 9s. I would consider it a 9 even with the wrinkling on it. As you can pick it up here. But I don't think so. I think we're dealing with an 8 or an 8.5. I'm going to put 8.5 just because the spine is so nice. And then I'm going to write down on the backer board that 8.5 where the press there. So then what I end up doing is in my my ledger, I've started to mark down which books I feel can be pressed. Just then see, if adding the press to the book, is it worth my time to go ahead and press it out? So I've started to do that. So I think this was the most expensive book in the order. And it showed up on a hot list for a week or two and then kind of disappeared. But the value had been kind of inflated a bit, so the values are sticking right now. But yeah, this is probably a good pressing candidate. I have to be careful, but the staples are in a good position. Spine looks great. Corners look great. So, it has the potential to be a 9.8 if I can get those creases off the cover. So that's just kind of unfortunate there. All right, let's take a look at X-Men 239. This is a Great Inferno Mr. Sinister cover. Actually, I don't want to keep laying that book on there. Let me put it in. Let me get that book out of the way. Okay. So here is X-Men out of the bag. So here it is, 239. Right by schemes, I see a little bit of something there. Not bad. Spine curl. A little bit of dirt that would have to be cleaned up there. But looks pretty good. A slight overhang on that top cover, which is typical. Again, a press more or less gets that out. This one doesn't look too bad. Back not too dirty. I really don't see any dents anywhere in here, so this is pretty strong. You might make the case that this is a 9.8. I'm looking at it a little bit more closely, and I just see just a few like hairline bumps along the spine. Right in here, there's several. Yeah, there you go. Now you can see there's 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, 4 along the spine. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 9.6. So this one is screaming, work with me with your tack iron, because the tack iron is what gets those guys out. And I haven't done a tack iron video in a while, and this one I might set aside as something to work on, like do a little cleanup video or something on a book. So they're so subtle. So for this one, and again, it's that you can see that overhang too. That's tough. So that makes me think, is it not a 9.6? Are we talking 9.4? I do think the back is super strong. The spine looks solid. Corners look great. I don't know if I showed the corners or not, but that's about as good as you're going to get. Bottom one has just a tiny bit of softening there, but it's really, the top one is super strong and sharp. I want to give it a 9.6 because I feel like, well, now I look at it again and I see the curling there plus the overhang. I think I got to go 9.4. as soon as I start to talk about it or second guess myself on the grade, and I'm trying to justify and push the book into the higher grade, I know it's the lower of the two grades. So that's fine. Again, this is a candidate to get into a 9.8. So I'll put 9.4 with a press. That book does not need humidity. So not bad. Stuff on the backing board. Okay. I do believe Mr. Sinister is going to show up as an X-Men villain or part of the X-Men in one way or another. So I am gathering books like this, his early covers. I have a couple of his first appearance, and just kind of holding on to them and buying them while people are talking about Miss Minutes and other things. I'm grabbing Mr. Sinister instead. This one was cool. I've saw a couple of these pop up on Mile High. This is X-Men 155. So I did not have this copy, and I think one of my orders coming up has the newsstand counterpart. I didn't buy newsstand to tell you how rare newsstand or direct is. I bought it because whether it's newsstand or direct, Mile High had this book, I think, listed under fair market value. So I wanted to grab it. So let's take a look at this. Let's look at the spine on this one. A little dirty there, but I don't know if we could get that out with a little cleanup. The spine looks great. Corner has right at the top there. See, right by the corner in the black, there's just a little bit of a indentation there. Spine looks strong, a little bit of an issue there. Again, a tack iron or just a quick press probably pop that out. Like all these books, you can see here in the light, there's a little bit of like a spine well or curl here. I forget what Captain Mike called it, like a spine push or something. This one is interesting to me because it has that disappearing corner effect, or disappearing staple. And this happens with a bad press. So I'm wondering if this book was pressed at some point and then Mile High picked it up. But you can see on the back here how the cover kind of crunched in there. Now, I'm not saying this book was pressed or maybe it was pressed incorrectly and they just left it. But that is something that I'm starting to notice. So if I open up to the centerfold and find that staple, it looks okay. I don't see any evidence that the staple was being pushed into the book. That could have just been a natural occurrence. I don't know. But it's typically, you typically see that when the book is pressed, and I'll kind of do it a little bit where if I push the cover that way, it starts to hang over, and then you can imagine a press just crunching it down and creating a little bit of a tear. So it's almost like a detached staple, but not quite. So that's disappointing. Again, I'm curious to see what CGC says about this, and I may have to go on the forums or post my own pictures in there. Back looks clean, could use a little bit of a dry clean down here. So I don't know whether to knock the book for the staple disappearing effect or not, just because I'm not familiar with that type of defect. But I know there's a problem up here that's probably preventing it from being a 9.8. We know that. So now we're talking 9.6. A couple of tiny spine issues. The curl, now it's 9.4. And then we're dealing with the staple. So I'm probably going to give it a 9.2 just to be on the safe side. Again, would benefit from a press as long as it doesn't damage the cover any further. So I'm going to leave this book as a 9.2. And I'll need to do some research on that staple issue because I did ruin a book recently, and I noticed that, and it had to do, I over-humidified it, And then when I put it in the press, the cover just kind of got warped and I couldn't properly close the book. And I noticed both staples had that issue. So it's interesting that only one has it. So that's where I'm leaning towards it being a natural problem and not a problem created through a press, especially because there's also this corner issue on the back, right? So it is subtle, but there's a bit of an impact dent there. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to give it a 9.2. And it would probably be a pretty expensive experiment to send a book like this to CGC kind of as is, or at least if I could press out the other issues first, but then if it still had that staple push, see what CGC would give it. I'm just really afraid that they would consider that to be some sort of pressing defect and then really punish the book. Like, oh, I can tell you pressed it and therefore I'm going to give it a 7, or just something weird. This book I still get all the time. There's lots of copies of this on Mile High. I feel like I get the same copy every time. This is my 4th X-Men Adventures #1. I try and pick this up as often as I can. And all of these books have this terrible miswrap, which I can't stand. Almost every copy. And then same thing right there with a giant spine tick right there by the staple. It's so weird. And I feel like I'm at the casino and I'm like, I think the next pull of the slot machine, that's going to be the one that hits. And I keep feeding it. And I'm like, well, now that I've lost every time, the next one has to win, right? That's kind of how I feel. This book is still available on Mile High at the same price I paid with that 60% off coupon. And they're all the X-Men adventures are like this. So it's really weird. So it has that really noticeable color breaking spine tick right there by the staple. Nothing else really. There's just some tiny denting here on the spine, just those super hairline, hard to see spine ticks. The curl, I mean, they're all kind of the same at this point. You get that spine curl, so it's in need of a press. Corner has some softening. So again, I'm thinking about it as probably a 9.2. I think it's in a little bit of a better condition than that X-Men 155. So then it's like, well, is it a 9.4? But I don't know. I don't think so. I still think it's a 9.2. It could pass for a 9.4. It really could. I still think it needs to be pressed out. But I don't think it maxes 9.8 because of that one. That's a pretty nasty. Let me see if I can get it closer. It's not quite a tear, but it's pretty bad. So this is the other thing too. I don't want my general disappointment to punish the book. My disappointment stems with the fact that I get miswrapped books from time to time at Mile High. And I know that that's just the way it is. Sometimes comics are miswrapped. So I'm going to stick with the 9.4. Let me know if you disagree. This one's tough. It does look clean. I don't see any cover issues on the front or back in terms of dent. It's very smooth. I usually knock it down a grade if it's curled. And it depends on the severity of the curl. I think I've mentioned this before too. I have a book with a slight curl that is a 9.8, so I know you can get a 9.8 with that, but once you just kind of have to eyeball it. Once it gets past a certain level in the depth of the well, I always knock it down a grade, and then I feel like that's a pretty significant issue. I don't see anything else really. You could argue that corner is rough, but is that really going to knock it down a whole other grade down to a 9.2? I think it's an okay 9.4. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then the last book is another book. This is my second copy, but I'm picking up this book, Shadows of the Empire, #1 from Star Wars, Dark Horse, and then also Tales of the Jedi. So I'm trying to grab both of those before the next wave of Star Wars announcements comes out. So let's take a look at this one. I had picked up a copy of this from Mile High not too long ago, and it was not a 9.8 candidate. So let's see if this is. These are always interesting with Dark Horse because they're not quite cardstock, but they are like super glossy. I thought that was a spine tick and it's dust. So at first glance, we have a little bit of a dent right there by the staple, but it is not color breaking. So if I move it away from the light here, let me draw it in a little bit, that what you see is actually, it's almost like a reflection in the gloss, but it's not color breaking. The rest of the spine looks really good. That's good light right there. You can really see and pick that up. So that looks good. The corner down there, and I'm starting to hold it like this because I don't want my fingerprints on it. Corner down there looks okay. This one's hard to pick up in the camera because of the gloss. So borderline acceptable on that corner. I think we're all right there. Let me see if I can get a piece of cloth just to hold this so I don't get fingerprints on it. I'm worried that I'm going to get, I may have to grate it down here and pick it up with a glove or something, but yeah, there's definitely something there on that corner. There is a spine break right here, right in there. Looks good otherwise. So this is going to be one of those where if you didn't catch those little details, you're like, oh, this is a 9.8, I got a 9.8. And then it comes back a 9.6. So this one's going to be a 9.6 for me. And I'm not going to mark this as a pressing candidate. I don't really know how to best press this era of Dark Horse comics where it's semi-cardstock and a lot of gloss, which I know the press can handle it. You can do a quick press on something like that, and it won't lose too much of the gloss. But this one was in much better shape than the previous one I got, and I am worried that they somehow get a stack of these all in about the same type of condition, and then they're all like 9.2s. But this one's not bad. So I'm happy with that as a 9.6. Again, I don't trust myself to really press it. I feel like it could be a sneaky 9.8. I don't know. Actually, why am I calling it a 9.6? Let's look at it one last time before it goes in here. There's a bit of a dent right in here, which we talked about. And then the corners are just not as sharp as I would like them to be. And then on the back, I just noticed a pretty significant spine tick around the bottom, right there by my thumb. And then that corner, I'm trying to see if I can fix it by sort of just grabbing it with my thumbnail, but I think it's just dinged, like permanently dinged. So, and I probably got some fingerprints on it already. I'm just gonna wipe it off just to be on the safe side. I am always worried about that. So I usually keep some sort of cloth or tissue nearby and drop that in there. Okay. So again, I'm being like super nitpicky with this one, but I feel like it's a strong 9.6. If for some reason this book becomes a super sought after Star Wars key, then I might send it in, and still there's a lot of value in the 9.6. But as of right now, when these books sort of take off a little bit, the 9.8s really take off, and then it takes a little while for the grades underneath to be pulled up by the 9.8. So I'm going to leave it as a 9.6. So those were the grades of the 5 books. That was that Mile High order. Now let's take a look at the order analysis. See if I got good value for these or if I overpaid. So let's go through the order and apply the grades and see how I did. All right, here we go. This is the order that I placed on December 16th, 2021. I'll fix the bottom here in a second. It was a $166.40 order. And just to verify that, I've got my total cost in column Z with the summary matching. So here's the thing. You kind of know how this works. I was targeting 9.4s. So if I put them all as 9.4, you can see the value that I was going for here is supposed to be a over $200 value add into my collection just based on these 5 books. But if I undo that and put the grades that I actually gave the books in here, it is a touch under $100 value add. So I'm still positive. From a raw book perspective, it was a profit, mainly having to do with Shadows of the Empire and Uncanny 155 being really good raw values. Not so much for 155 and a 9.2 at a $53 CGC value. The Destroyer Duck one obviously is the rough part of the order. If that book were even a 9.4, you're talking about a candidate to be sent to CGC and pushing this order way over, but the fact that it was so wrinkled. Now, the upside is it can be pressed. So here's what I'm doing that's a little bit different that I may not have shown before, is I have this press status. Now, I put them, I copied that row or those rows from another order, so I had them all marked. But I'm going to look and see. I think only one. So these were all pressing candidates except for Shadows of the Empire. So what I do now is I put a press status here with the letter P to indicate it could be pressed, and then if HP, if it require humidity. I'm not differentiating between quick press and full press, or I like to say full court press, or any tack iron work. I'm just saying it would benefit from a press. If I get that detailed and I'm that good at identifying what kind of press it is, then I'll change this. So what I do by default is I put the grade before, grade after if I do end up pressing, and then kind of what the press potential is. I'm not really in the market to press like a 3.0 or a 4.0 up to a 4.5 or a 5. I'm not really in that. I'm really looking at books that when I say are eligible for a press, I feel like it can be improved and probably jump into the 9s. So I like to see this here. And then press value change, that's if I actually do end up pressing the book and so on. So let me mark this with a P. And I'll do the same for the 3 other books. And you can see these values come in. And according to the numbers, Destroyer Duck number 1 and a 9.8 is a $1,500 book. Okay, maybe, sure. I don't know. Could I press it into a 9.4 by smoothing out those wrinkles on the front? I think I can, and already that's a $189 book. So just keeping going here in column AP, which I didn't do this on purpose, kind of coincidentally, if you talk about like after press or anything like that, after a press, it has the potential value gain of this amount. So this is the amount of value that I could add to the book if I were to press it and it were to come back as a 9.8 after the press. If it doesn't, then I just, sort of hard code the value of what it is, and then I remove the press indicator after the press, showing the final grade. And then I use some other elements here to get into Atomic Avenue that hopefully you saw in my previous video. So I've got a lot of additional data that I'm tracking here. So we can see the potential of the order to be great, but right now, if I'm just being honest with the books as they are, we have a $97 value add, but I'm definitely going to look at these books. Let me kind of show you too what the press priority looks like, right? So when I'm marking those books, what happens? So I have this sheet here as like a press priority that helps me kind of model what books I should consider pressing. So I don't want to show the books that would require humidity. I think those are a little out of scope. Let's see where, yeah, so that yeah, just mark it right here. So you can see the Destroyer Duck right now is third on my list. I gave it an 8.5. And what I do is I sort this by the press potential. So right here in the column AP, I have a value here. And this helps me just prioritize. It doesn't necessarily mean that Destroyer Duck 1 is the next one going into my press. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen. But it allows me to go through and say, okay, if X-Men 109 were to get a press, this is the potential value I'm adding to the book. ASM 301, Destroyer Duck number 1, ASM 165, and on and on and on. But what I often do is I'll look at the press potential and say, okay, maybe I look at the current grade, and if it's like this one being 8.5, like, ugh, am I really going to get a 9.8 out of that? I also look at the cost, total cost. So something like Thor 347, it has a pretty high press potential, but I only paid $3.82 for it. Came back in 9.2. So that's a book that I'm going to try and I'll mess with. Same thing here, Avengers 273, $5.57, already in a 9.4, has some value, but has a press potential in a 9.8, where I could add $270 to the book if I pressed it. So this is the kind of data that I track. And the reason I do this, especially with I wanted to show you the pressing part, was because I would put my orders together for CGC, and I'm literally going through my short boxes and looking behind the backer boards where I put the grade and looking for 9.8. And what I found is like just it was a sea of grades with that pressing indicator. And I'm lost. I'm like, I don't know. Like, should I press all of these? Should I not? Do I just look at the fair market value and say, well, if it's a $20 book, I should press it? Because that Thor 347 is an interesting one. It has kind of a low FMV, but a huge pressing potential and a low cost. So that's one that I'd probably prioritize. Or do I just look at the value of the book and just say, well, if I can improve it, it must be worthwhile. But it's dangerous because if you're taking a $200 or $300 or $400 book and it's a 9.6 and you're trying to press it, are you adding risk there? Like, there was a lot going through my mind, and I ended up just kind of randomly picking books to work on for pressing. And I'm like, I shouldn't be randomly picking books to press. I shouldn't randomly be picking books to send to CGC for grading. I need to be able to do these in a certain order where it makes good financial sense and it's a good, good use of my time and my experience and my expertise as I'm curating my collection. So using these sort of pressing indicators and looking at potential value gains if the book were to be pressed, and what grades it could potentially get after the press, it's really helped me put together my orders for CGC more easily, and has actually kept books in my press almost around the clock. There's always one book in my press now, and that had never happened before. I was always pressing one or two a month as I'm learning. Now I have a book in the press, one in the morning, one in the evening, and I'm just kind of going through this one by one and then seeing, did I really move that 9.4 to a 9.8 or is it a 9.6? Either way, I did improve it. So I'm getting better with pressing. I'm getting better with the data. I'm putting it all together, and I'm using it to really focus and target specific books out there on the market. Hope you enjoyed that. Happy collecting. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.